Welcome to the Fantasy Wildcard, our first show of 2021. I'm your host, Kev, and with me tonight, as always, is my co-host, Matt. Good evening, Matt.
How's it going? Are we all right? This is a bit strange, isn't it?
It is. It's our first ever live stream. It's our debut. We're moving all of our shows into a live stream where it'll be available on YouTube and directly onto Twitter as well. It's our debut. We have had a few technical difficulties. Matt was trying to keep his camera turned off because I thought it was a catfish, but my mum says I've got a face for radio, so we'll see how it goes. No doubt we'll get a lot of viewers and fans based on your good looks, Matt, as a former Matalan model, and also the 1991 Baby of the Year for Doncaster. So we'll see how it goes.
They were all down there, all downhill from that point, Kev. So I'll take my award from when I was one.
So we have had a few weeks away from podcasting. It's given us a chance to reflect on the 2020 season, gather our thoughts, but also look forward to the 2021 season. And I think it's fair to say we're both refreshed and ready to roll.
Yeah.
So on today's show, we'll be reviewing the 2020 season and looking at some of our personal hits and misses from a dynasty perspective. To kick us off, we'll look at players we hit with in our analysis and predictions. Basically, the first half of the show, we're going to be taking victory laps. So I'll let you begin with that, Matt. Who's your first hit?
Yeah, so my first hit is a guy that I was talking about all off season, just before the season started, and it was Tyler Boyd, the wide receiver for the Cincinnati Bengals. So nice. If you follow me on Twitter, you know that I was super high on Tyler Boyd. The moment I knew they were getting the 101 pick and they were going to end up getting Joe Burrow, I just wanted every piece of Tyler Boyd I could get, basically. And the main reason for it, and it was because Joe Burrow, he just loved to target Justin Jefferson, didn't he, when he was at LSU? That slot wide receiver, and with obviously Boyd playing that slot position, I just thought the volumes, it's just going to be there this coming season. And the fact that it was going wide receiver 30 to 35 in the off season, despite finishing wide receiver 18 in 2019, it was just a screaming buy for me, basically. And I think it's just somebody that's constantly undervalued in Dynasty. It did finish 2020 as the wide receiver 29, but that was, obviously we had Joe Burrow go down week 11. But he was wide receiver 13 from week 1 to week 10, so it was definitely performing well above what his ADP was. So
yeah,
I'm going to claim this one as a victory, even though he did obviously.
Right.
Well, yeah, but I thought it was fantastic to start the year. But as I say, when Burrow went down, obviously the quarterback play that all fell off, so kind of put a halt to it. It's a good start, but to be honest, I'm a big fan of this offense again coming into 2021. I think. Obviously, Boyd's going to be great. I think Burrow looked fantastic when he was playing. So, and T. Higgins as well. Obviously, I think the fact that Boyd had that slow start, and obviously with T. Higgins being there and a lot of hype around T. Higgins, I think Boyd's going to be a value again this off season. So, yeah, I was just wondering what you thought, Kev. What are your feelings on Boyd, and do you think Burrow can support both Boyd and Higgins in 2021?
Yeah, I think he's an interesting guy, is Boyd. He's I mean, if you look at his stats with Joe Burrow at QB, he was on pace for 258.3 fantasy points, which would have put him as wide receiver 10 on the season, which pretty wild. I don't actually think Boyd's a star in terms of the talent-wise. I think a lot of it's based off the back of volume, which makes him more of a floor than a ceiling play. But I do think he's solid over the longer term, a solid wide receiver 2 or 3. In terms of Joe Burrow, he played the 10 games like you said, and he was on pace for 646 pass attempts, which is number 1 in the NFL. So that really matches up with Boyd really well as a volume receiver. But I do think the pass attempts will be there again next season and possibly a year after, just based on the Bengals being a rebuilding franchise and a team. I think as well, you got to sort of understand that AJ Green's a free agent. He'll be gone. He had 104 targets, which I think he caught less than 50 passes. He was pretty atrocious. So by him going, it's going to free up even more targets. So to answer your question on can he support both Boyd and Higgins, I think he can. I think they're both stars. I think T Higgins, he's going to be the alpha. I think he's got a really bright future. I know you'd said maybe a couple of weeks back that you have him ranked over CD Lamb, which might raise a few eyebrows. But yeah, I think it's well warranted based on the volume. What about you? Do you think he can support them both? Do you think it's an offense to be targeting from a volume perspective, I guess?
Yeah, as I said, coming into this year, I thought, obviously we know the defense isn't great with the Bengals, so we know that they're going to be usually chasing games. So yeah, I just feel like he's going to get that volume, and it just proves that he can do it coming out of the slot. He gets plenty of targets. As I say, Burrow, he loves his slot wide receiver. He showed it all through college, and that's just what made it just such a standout target for me, basically. And yeah, it looked brilliant this year, and I don't see any reason why he can't do it again in 2021.
It's fair to say we do love them Bengals, and we have got another Bengal to talk about a little bit later on, but maybe not from a positive slant, or maybe it will be from a positive slant. We'll just have to see how that goes. Before we go into my first bit, I just want to share a few comments that have come up so far. Waddy, a good friend of ours, said Kev looks so, which is
so good. He just missed good off.
Yeah, he missed good off the end.
Yeah.
Nice guy. And then we've also got one from our buddy Rich.
He's a stranger.
Which one of us is Brad Pitt is the question. I mean, I'm only messing. It's clearly Matt as a former model.
Sure. Not sure. I've got this beard. I'm like the old Brad Pitt with the beard.
Okay, so in terms of my first hit, it's pumping up Ronald Jones, who, if you've listened to the podcast towards the end of last year, you know, I managed to get his name on every pod. It's terrible, really, but yeah, all off season I was into buying Rojo in existing dynasty leagues, but also in a big value in startups. You could get him for a late second, early third rounder, and his startup ADP was like running back 30 to 35 range. The reason I was so high on him was mainly based on the opportunity as nearly down back on a potentially potent offense with Tom Brady in charge of that. I also felt he had far more talent than Keyshawn Vaughn, LaShawn McCoy, and Dare Ogunbowale. Now, I will caveat and say that I don't think it's a great process to be prioritising opportunity over talent. However, in the short term and on the value that he was getting him at, I thought it made sense to be all aboard the Rojo train. Now, he did end up the running back 20 on the season as an RB2 in fantasy points per game, which is a fantastic return from a guy who was getting so cheap. And this was despite the late season addition of Leonard Fournette, who I thought could have a potential bad impact on his opportunity. And nobody saw that coming that late in the offseason. And whilst I was all over Ronald Jones as a value, I was aware that he wasn't a free down back, that if there was a chance to sell high, then you had to take it. And I believe there was a bit of a sell high opportunity early on in the season after a 3-game breakout. And we know that he's got pass limitations, which does make him a little bit more volatile. What I would say is I don't think long term he should be buying into 2-down guys that struggle in the pass game, the exception being Derrick Henry. But we've seen how volatile he is when the Titans get behind. So with everything considered, Matt, I just wanted your views on Ronald Jones. Everyone knows my views. If you own him in Dynasty, what are you doing with him now? And do you think he can be viable once again?
Yeah, I mean, for Ronald Jones, I like him, but I don't love him. So, as you say, while he has looked a lot better running the ball, he's still, as you say, shown those limitations in the passing game, which is obviously a big concern with fantasy. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how with your running backs, you just want those guys that can catch balls, because I know a lot of leagues are PPR leagues, and with that pass catching, it just elevates them. So this season, 42 targets, 28 receptions, and just 165 yards. So if we're talking in terms of PPR numbers, that's 44.5 points. So over the course of the season, it's not a lot really, is it? It sounds a lot just as a number, but when you spread that over the 16 games you play during the season, it's not really adding much to his performances each week. I mean, he is somebody that I will probably hold on to if you're short on running backs. He's going to have his RB2 weeks in the right matchups, but that's the issue for me. It's just got to be in those certain matchups where you're playing a all-run defense, or if you're you're needing to plug somebody in, he can do it in those certain matchups. But apart from that, really, you're just hoping each week if you've got to start him, then you're just praying that he has one of those good running games. If you can sell high on him, then yeah, I'd sell him for sure in Dynasty. But just looking at a lot of rankings and Dynasty rankings, he's around the names like Chris Carson, Kenyon Drake, Melvin Gordon, and they're all older running backs. I mean, Rojo's 23, I believe. So these are all running backs that are up there in age, but you also don't know what the future looks like for those guys. So I think if his value is around those kind of guys, I'm probably just going to hold Jones because he's younger and you feel like he's going to at least get another year at the Buccaneers to show what he can do. So, yeah, overall, I'm going to hold unless I can package him up for a more higher ranked running back.
Yeah, I think as well with the way that Leonard Fournette's showing out towards the end of the season in the playoffs, I think that'll dampen his value even further. So trying to sell him at this stage, it's going to be pretty tricky. But I think on the flip side, it could be deja vu with him, I think, where he goes into sort of the free agency period of the year as the starter, but thinking that, they're going to bring somebody in a little bit like last year.
Yeah.
I think in an ideal world for Ronald Jones, he'd stay there, Fournette would go, and they'd bring in somebody like a James White who's got them connections with Tom Brady previously, because we know that James White's brilliant in the pass game, and Ronald Jones has looked pretty dynamic as a runner as well. So I think that's what you'd be hoping for as a Ronald Jones truther, as an owner. But yeah, I do agree with you that I find it really hard to imagine him being a running back 2 again next season. I think running back 3 is you'd probably be comfortable with that because, like you said, on those big blow up games he had, you kind of knew when they were going to be. You can kind of predict those positive game scripts where Tampa are going to be ahead. And I think while ever Brady's there and he's orchestrating that offense, it's going to be a good offense to have a part of.
Yeah, I think Tampa's going to be one of those teams when they're coming up to the draft that they're going to be one that they're hoping all these top running backs are going to fall on because, as you say, it's basically just going to be Rojo there. And if one of these pass catching running backs can get there, someone like Michael Carter, who I'm really high on coming into the draft. Oh, I just don't want to imagine Michael Carter on the books. I think that'd be unreal. But we'll have to see. It's definitely going to be an exciting backfield to see how it plays out. Keyshawn Vaughn, I'm not sold on him, to be honest. He was somebody that I was one of those guys that I kind of bought into the hype a little bit. And I know in a league wherein I actually took him at the end of the first round. And I'm ashamed to say it, but yeah, I still want to maybe see what he can do. But from what I have seen, he's not really like the answer, has he?
No, I think Keyshawn Vaughn, it's you and John Bowen in that club.
I think it was John that he's the one that inspired me to go out and grab him. So yeah, I'm going to go after John for that one.
All right. So next up, we've got another player that's that struggled in 2020. Who's your next hit, Matt?
Yeah, so my next hit, it's more of a team hit, I think, because all three of us were saying this in the off season, but it was to sell Drew Lock, the quarterback for the Broncos. Obviously, all three of us have said we said it on the podcast. I know when I came on as a guest, it was my sell. I wasn't buying into all this hype that was going around with him. It was just that small sample size for me. Obviously, he only had those few games in 2019. But his ADP, we were talking about quarterback 14, 15, so we're talking like a high-end QB2 in value in it. It was just far too risky for me, just going off those 5 games in 2019. 3 of them he had less than 200 yards, so nothing spectacular, but I just think people were buying into that rushing ability, and a lot were saying that he didn't really need to throw the balls, and I think they were just buying into the upside and what they believed could happen, rather than just focusing on what was actually there in front of us. And it was just such a small sample size with a few flashes. He did have a couple of good games, but on the whole, it was just, for me, it was clear to see that it was a risk, and his value was just getting pumped up far too high, and he ended up finishing the quarterback 23 this season. So it's not really, it's not brilliant, especially as I say, QB 14, 15 in value before the season. yeah, you've definitely not got any return from the value of investing into him, basically. And now, obviously, his job's at risk. We're talking about, could a free agent come in? There's a lot of names being talked about moving this year, obviously Stafford and maybe Aaron Rodgers, players like that. And then obviously there's draft as well. They're in a good spot to get a quarterback. I think they've got pick 9, so they're in a great spot to grab one of the top quarterbacks. So for me, it's not looking great for Drew Lock. And I think if you haven't sold him, you're basically just praying that he somehow manages to keep hold of the job. You're down on your hands and knees, and you're praying to the football gods that it can come back in 2021. But for me, I just can't see it happening. So yeah, what do you think, Kev? Are people's prayers going to be answered? Can he hold on to the starting job, or do you just think the Broncos are going to start again, get a new quarterback, and if so, who do you think they could possibly have their eye on?
Yeah, so I don't think Lock's the answer. I think he's not going to be in a starting job next season. You said as a team we were all on the selling Drew Lock, and I believe my last article for the Astronauts was an article titled "Lock to Disappoint," which it was a lock to disappoint. It's it could be. I think that 5-game sample it flashed a little bit, but when you dug a bit deeper, it wasn't that impressive against based on the schedule. And then last season, you said he was fantasy QB 23 on the season. He was also QB 31 in fantasy points per game. And I think at the moment in the NFL in 2021, there's a really strong supply of starting QBs, both veterans and incoming rookies. So they've definitely got options. You're absolutely right. Pick 9, it's putting them in range for a rookie, which I think if they do take a rookie, it will give Lock a potential chance to be a bridge QB, which then you just absolutely sell in low just to get what you can back from him. I don't think is a long-term answer. And then just on your second part about who they could have their eye on, Stafford was mentioned, but I think it's looking like the Colts likely for him. Personal preference on Stafford, I'd like him to go to the Washington football team. But if he goes to go to the draft, pick 9, 2 guys that stand out would be Trey Lance and Zach Wilson. They probably have to jump the Panthers at pick 8. But just depends how the draft unfolds. You never know how it will go. But yeah, do you think they'll go free agent or draft on Lock?
Well, I thought it would have made sense maybe to try and get Stafford. I think they could offer that pick, that number 9 pick, and grab Stafford. I think the team as a whole, I don't think it's far off being a playoff team. I mean, they finished 5-11, I believe, this year. But we talk about from fantasy teams anyway. We talk about the players they've got. Obviously, Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton when he comes back, AJ Hamler, Joe Judy. They're stacked basically in offensive weapons at least. So I think if somebody like Stafford came, I think they could really elevate that team and definitely get them making a push for the playoffs. So yeah, Stafford would be a good choice. And as you say, in the draft, someone like Trey Lance, I'm a big fan of Trey Lance. He's going to be my QB3, I think, for sure. Out of these rookies, yeah, he'd be brilliant on that team. It'd be a great team to watch, actually, from an offensive point of view. So yeah, I like the sound of Trey Lance on that team. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we would all love that with all those weapons, and that's another reason why Lock's been a disappointment, because even though Cortland Sutton was injured, he's still got plenty of weapons there to really stand out as a fantasy producer and as a real life QB. Do you think that with Lock it is a lack of talent, or do you just think it's that he's a raw type of guy that needs a bit of seasoning, a bit of support, maybe needs to sit on the bench a few years? Do you think he can ever get back from this, or is he just career backup after he does hit the pine?
I think he can be. I mean, he has shown it in games. He's shown flashes that he can carry a team and he can put the team on his back. As we mentioned with the rushing ability, he's not afraid to have a run and risk getting hit. I think he's definitely got the confidence. Maybe, well, I say confidence. It's obviously been knocked with how disappointed they've been this year. But yeah, I do think he has the talent, and I do think there's a chance that, as you say, if he just maybe sat behind a veteran for a couple of years. I mean, he basically got thrown in, didn't he, at the deep end, coming in at the end of 2019. I don't think the Broncos were ready to put him in straight away, and they were probably hoping they could sitting behind a veteran for a bit. But yeah, I think if he does have a couple of years maybe behind somebody and then hopefully get another shot, he can maybe show what a lot of people hoped he could do in 2020.
Indeed, and speaking about showing people what he could do, in 2020, that brings me nicely onto my second hit, which was to fade Joe Mixon. So I might upset you a bit, but we'll see how it goes. So he was a dynasty running back 5 to 7 range back in August, with the concerns about Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara contract and the injury issues. I called him the most overrated player in fantasy football at that point. He's basically a Big Mac at a Five Guys price. The reason I was fading him was based on his previous usage. He was used mainly as a 2-down back on a bad team in the Bengals, and I felt this would limit his touchdown upside on a poor team. And the lack of pass usage, it doesn't fit well with playing from behind. We saw that Gio Bernard's still pretty competent in the pass game. He's used there quite a lot. So that was a big concern for me with Mixon. Now, I can't take a full victory of that because he did only play 6 games. And actually, in those 6 games, his pass game usage did improve. He was on pace for 56 receptions. And he was a running back 11 in fantasy points per game. But it is worth noting that half his games he was outside the top 25 running backs on a weekly basis. He had one big blow-up game against the Jags, where I think he went over 40 points, which you've got to count it because it happened. But without that, it would look a very ordinary 5-game sort of season. I think as well, because of that, the sort of usage he had, it was hard to trust him as a guy that's going to be volatile. And if you're taking him in round 1 or 2 of your dynasty startups, I think that's something you want to be avoiding, as much risk as you can early on. If we look now, though, he is going anywhere in that running back 15 to 20 range in startups, which I guess in a way it shows us correct to fade him, but also I think it gives an opportunity to buy as well. So I think, I guess the question to you, Matt, is his current cost. Would you be looking to buy into him with his pass game usage that he was starting to show, and on a team that's likely to have a lot of pass volume, as we said on Tyler Boyd, or do you think you'd be off him after he burnt you last season?
I'm definitely still on Joe Mixon. I can't even believe you suggested that I'm going off him. But yeah, I'm still very much in love with Joe Mixon, and coming into 2021, I'll be buying him everywhere. As I say, his value has dropped, and I guess rightfully so. As somebody, as I say, I was really high and mighty him in a lot of leagues, and it was frustrating. He had that slow 3-game start, as you mentioned, but I think we've been a little bit harsh on him overall. I think he did improve in those last 3 games, but obviously the injury just derailed any chance he had of getting back on track and returning the value that you paid to get him. My big hope, I think, moving into 2021 is that the Bengals go after an own lineman. I've heard rumours that they could go elsewhere, but I just think they need to sort this O-line out, protect Joe Burrow, and obviously it's going to help Mixon as well in the running game. An interesting stat that I found: 57% of his total yards were after contact, so it just shows that he's getting hit straight away, and he's having to fight for those yards. So I think a little bit of help on the O-line, and wheels up. I'm a huge fan of his talent. I don't really want to admit it, but I thought he was going to be a top 3 running back in 2020. Obviously, that didn't happen, and even if he stayed healthy, it would never going to happen, I don't think. But yeah, just with that, I think that little increase in the passing game, you made a great point coming into the season. It was a concern, but it looked like they were starting to get the idea that they needed to get it in Mixon's hands and just let him do what he does. Basically, he's brilliant when he's got the ball in his hands. So yeah, I'm still a believer, Kev. I'm not going off Mixon just because you've come up with a couple of reasons to fade him, and no, I'm all over him.
I think Mixon's got a lot of fans as well. When I posted it last off season, I got absolutely mauled. Nobody came back though, which was interesting. But
I think that was mainly me and Rich that were
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I think Mixon's so talented, and I think he can be a 3-down back. He's got all the talent in the world, and for the film grinders out there or people that watch NFL, you can tell that he's got so much talent, and he just needs that little bit of support around him to really take off. I think talent-wise, he's right up there, but it's just been a situation that's not really helped him in fantasy. But I kind of agree with you. Running back 15 to 20, considering he was running back 5 to 7, like sort of August time, you've got to be getting on board at that price, I believe. Like, there'll be guys like David Montgomery going around him or before him, which I think talent-wise, it's
not even close, is it?
It's miles apart.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm hopeful for him. I might change my tune, but I think I was right to fade him.
Another point I just want to make though is he's got that security as well. He's got that job security. He's just had this massive contract. Obviously, we're not going to say that means he's going to be fantastic, but he's at least got that job security for a while. And he's by no means old. I think he was quite a young running back when he came into the league. So yeah, I think we've still got plenty of years Mixon to tear it up. Yeah, don't need to be worrying just yet.
Do you worry about his injuries? I think he's.
Yeah, it is a good point. I think, as we mention it all the time, though, when it comes to running backs, it's the position, isn't it? It's the position you play. There's every chance it could happen to anybody. Sometimes it can just be freak injuries that happen to running backs because it is such a tough position. So I wouldn't say he's necessarily an injury risk. I'm not having it, Kev. There's nothing you can say that's going to make me go off Mixon. It's not happening.
I think you're right as well. Like, when you're considering running backs, you're going to get injured. I mean, every running back gets injured. We've seen this season, Christian McCaffrey, he got injured. He'd never had an injury before. Saquon's had 2 years on the bounce. If you're discounting running backs or not drafting running backs because you're worried about injury, you're going to miss on guys like Dalvin Cook that was stud this season as well. So you've just got to bite that bullet when you're drafting running backs, and they can get injured. You just got to.
Even if you do think somebody there's a high risk that he could get injured, you basically you've got to factor that into your price that you're wanting to pay for him. But it can outweigh it if they perform someone like Dalvin Cook. I mean, it's just lit it up. If he misses a couple of games, but he's won you the other 13, 14 that he's played. So yeah, you've got to factor it in. It happens. It can happen to anyone, as you say. So no, I'm not having that one, Kev.
In injured running backs, that'll be a theme that's coming up very soon. So we've gone through a few of our hits from the 2020 season, and now we'll look at players that we actually missed on in our analysis and predictions. So, like I said, injured running backs. Who's your first miss, Matt?
Do we have to do this part? Can we just have a show full of hits? We'd have to end the show now, to be honest, because I don't think I had that many. But yeah, my miss, it was, again, if you follow me on Twitter in the off season, you know this is going to be, but it was Todd Gurley. I bought into all the hype, the Atlanta Falcon hype, and I look like an absolute idiot now. I made that typical mistake. I just bought into the opportunity. You mentioned it earlier with Rojo. It's not something you should do, but I did. I bought into it. That obviously 1 year deal on an offense where there was basically no strength behind him in the depth chart. It was basically just Todd Gurley and a few nobodies, you'd have said. So I bought into that. My hope was that they'd just ride him all year long and just ride him into the ground, basically, and he could just put up RB1 numbers. And to be fair, he did get plenty of carries to start the year. The first 9 weeks, he was the RB6, actually, but did he look like the RB6? No, not at all. It was just those touchdowns. It was something that, with Gurley, he's always going to get those touchdowns because he's such a big guy, and he's always, all throughout his career, he's always been high in the touchdown department. But if you watched any of the games, he was not impressive at all. You could tell that the knee, obviously, something that a lot of people were concerned with. I basically just had blinkers on, and I was all in on the opportunity. So yeah, I've been made to look a fool. He finished the RB29, and as I say, he's gone from RB6 in those first 9 weeks to RB29. So it showed you what kind of second half to the year he had. He basically got any playing time at all. He had 36 carries in those last 7 games. So yeah, it was after that bye week, I think the Falcons just decided, no, it's not working with Gurley. And that was it. They moved on. But now, I mean, we talk about his value now. What is it? It's basically nothing. I'd be surprised if you get a third round pick from him now. It just looks a figure of what he used to be. Talking 2 years ago, he was going like 101, 102, weren't he, in startups? So
Yeah,
it's been a massive fall from grace, and yeah, he's made me look an absolute fool this year. but what do you think, Kev? Do you think there is any chance that Gurley can lead a backfield, or do you just think he is more suited maybe to being a goal line back? As I say, he seems to have a nose for the touchdowns, but apart from that, I'm not convinced myself. What do you think?
Well, I think you made a great point about the situation that the Falcons had, where he was getting all the opportunity and that was going to ride him into the ground. But I think the ground came at about week 9, didn't it? Because, like I said, after the bye, he scored 27.9 fantasy points in his 6 games, which 4.65 average. It's woeful. He's entering his age 27 season, but he plays like he's 47. I mean, it's really bad when his highlight of his season was trying not to score a touchdown against the Lions, and he still managed to fall into the end zone.
That just sums it up, yeah.
I think nostalgia-wise, I would love to see him come back strong and hope it was an injury that he can get over, but I don't think that's the case. I think he won many people a title in 2017 with that amazing fantasy player performance, me included, but I don't even know if he can be a goal line back anymore. He looked like dust. I think if he is part of a split backfield, he'll probably end up having a Jordan Howard type season where he's just pinching a few touchdowns here and there and winding up the fantasy owners of the main back on that team. So yeah, I can't see a way back for Gurley. I know it's pretty disappointing as the chairman of the fan club in yourself, Matt. But if he was to come back, is there any team that he'd go to that you'd be happy with? Maybe him getting a shot at splitting a backfield and getting goal line touches.
I just can't see it, to be honest. I can't see him being. I just think his role now is just going to be a short yardage back, a goal line back. I mean, I could say somewhere like maybe Detroit to go alongside Swift, but as a Swift fan, I would not want Gurley there. Just because, as you say, it is basically Gurley's going to go from a loved fantasy asset to one that we can't stand, because he's going to be that guy that you can have. As I say, if he's at Detroit, you can have Swift and in comes Gurley at the 1 yard line and he's stealing your points. So yeah, Gurley is just gone. He's what is it? I wouldn't be surprised if he retired, to be honest. I mean, if he is struggling with that knee and it's clearly becoming a problem, I wouldn't be surprised at all if he just decides to hang it up. He's made his money. So
yeah, I'm not saying this just because I like you, Matt, but I was thinking about this before the show, and the first team I thought of was the Lions as well. So
really, look at this.
That is okay. If you watch this back later on, you'll see when you said Lions, my eyes lit up.
Nice.
I think I don't know, another place maybe like the Chargers, depending on what happens there, just because they were trying out like Kalen Ballage at running back, and I mean Eckler's a good player, and he did score a ton of touchdowns the other season, but a lot of that was through pass catching. I think he'd have a shot there, but we'll just have to see. I'll be really shocked if he was a starter again, whether it be the Falcons or elsewhere.
As we mentioned, with it being such a tough position, and we're talking about a guy that's got a troublesome knee, I mean, you can't rely on him, can you? It's just can't see it.
Look at JJ.
That's it. Where's he gone now? It's basically exactly the same, really, isn't it? So I don't think we'll be seeing much more Gurley, sadly.
Sad moment.
We need that shit.
Cue the Ghanaian funeral gif. Okay, so next up we'll move on to a miss of mine where I got this completely wrong, and this was to fade Aaron Rodgers. So after the Packers drafted Jordan Love in round 1 and failed to take a wide receiver in a loaded class, I was really worried for Rodgers. He'd come off back-to-back seasons with only 25 and 26 touchdowns, and he wasn't giving that Konami code rushability of the other elite QBs. I saw that he only had Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones as obvious pass weapons, and I felt that with them drafting AJ Dillon, there'd be more conservative run-based type offense. I had him about QB 14 to 15 in my dynasty rankings, and I didn't end up taking him anywhere, to be honest. I felt pretty good about that, but boy, I was wrong. QB2 on the season, 48 passing touchdowns, which was the most of his 16-year career. It was a man on a mission. It really showed why he should be considered one of the greatest QBs of all time. He's coming off the back of what will likely be an MVP season. In terms of what I got wrong with Rodgers, for me, it's fading that elite talent and putting too much weight into the long-term future. I mean, Rodgers has basically been a QB1 every season he's been in the NFL, so I have tweaked my strategy a little bit in Dynasty where I'm only thinking about 2 seasons into the future now. I think previously I was looking a little bit further and putting an emphasis on age a little bit when really I didn't need to, because I don't do it across other positions like wide receiver. The QB landscape, it's become so fluid, it's pointless to really think any further than 2 years into the future anyway. So I've made the mistake. I won't be fading Rodgers again. He's currently my QB 11 in Dynasty. Where does he rank for you? And there has been talk that he's looking for a new contract, and the chief exec wants to keep him as well. So do you think he'll leave Green Bay, or will he be around for a bit longer?
Yeah, so just going on my rankings, we're too alike, Kevin. It's just happens. QB 12, I've got him, so just a touch below you. But yeah, he's had an unreal year. It's fair to say he's been fantastic this year. Was it because they drafted Jordan Love in the first round and he's proven a point, or could he have done even better if they drafted a wide receiver in that first round? We don't know, but either way, he's been unreal. As I say, he's 37, but he's showing no signs at all of slowing down. It constantly shows that he can make all the throws, all the plays. He looked brilliant this weekend. Obviously, they didn't get the win, but threw 3 touchdowns again. So it just is an elite quarterback. He has been for years now, and he could easily play for another 4 or 5 years. So when you're talking dynasty, you're saying that 2-year window. I think he's easily got that in his locker, if not more. As far as when he moves on, he didn't sound too committed, did he? Really, when they asked him the questions after this weekend, he said his future was uncertain. There was mentioned, as you say, that about the contract situation and everything. But could he go this offseason? I mean, if it was announced that he was moving on to somebody else, I wouldn't be shocked at all. He could have seen somebody like Tom Brady, obviously, going to the Buccaneers and seeing what he can do on this new team. He obviously left the Patriots in a team that they're on the decline, basically. He had no weapons around him. Yeah. So is Rodgers gonna take a leaf out of Brady's book, see what he's done with the Buccaneers, and think, yeah, I just need a new change of scenery and let me get a Super Bowl, because it's just not happening, is it, with Green Bay? They're always the bridesmaid, but they just can't get to that wedding at the end. So yeah, it could easily be this off season. Could easily.
And I think you make a good comparison about the Bucs, because I think with Tom Brady, he's proven now that you can still be fantasy relevant going into your 40s. Yeah. He did it with some great weapons there for the Bucs. So I think even if Rodgers did end up going after this season or even now, that doesn't mean that he's not going to score fantasy points, does it? He's going to still continue to be an elite QB.
It could be even better. It could be even better. Yeah,
it could. Imagine. I mean, it's not unlikely to happen, but imagine Rodgers in Denver, for example. Yeah. Drew Lock gets to work under him. I know Rodgers hasn't been the best or the most approachable QB it's been spoke about, but imagine him there with those weapons. I'm sure they'd be very high-powered offense. But you make another great point about his career. He's been fantastic QB, and he's got 1 Super Bowl. It's a bit of a shame, really, because
he deserves a lot more.
He does deserve a lot more. Okay, so next miss, we've got yourself, Matt.
Yeah, yet another disappointing one for me. Kenyon Drake this time. A bit like Gailey, it was somebody again that I was targeting in a lot of leagues because of that opportunity. I bought into the finish that he had in 2019 with the Cardinals. He finished as the RB4 in the weeks after week 9 to the end of the season. Obviously, when he joined the Cardinals week 9, RB4. So had a brilliant end to the 2019 season, averaging just under 20 points a game. I just thought I've got to have a piece of this Kenyon Drake on this backfield, because if we can get that from a season long standpoint, then he's going to be a league winner. I ignored the fact that Chase Edmonds was there and he was going to affect his receiving work. So he did have a solid workload in 2020, but as I say, the upside was capped by Chase Edmonds being there. And it just made him a volatile player. You were relying on his rushing, and he was having games where he was struggling on the ground and he wasn't able to save it through receiving work. So finishes the RB16, but to be honest, that was a surprise. As an owner, I was surprised that he finished RB16 because it really didn't feel like it. It was mainly due, I think, to the strong finish he had. He obviously had that injury in the middle of the season, but he ended up being a low-end RB1 to finish off the year after that injury from week 10. So, yeah, maybe that's where he's got back to that RB16 point, but the return was nowhere near what he paid for him. I know in a league that I paid for the 107 to get him. And I thought it was just that final piece of the jigsaw. I was gearing up for the title. I was happy to give that up, and then when you look back now, it's obviously something you should never do. Never look back at what picks you gave up for a player. Do not look back at what player got selected with those picks, because it was Justin Jefferson for the 107. So,
oh man,
absolutely fuming. I'm stuck with Kenyon Drake.
What's that Milburn song? What you could have won.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another tip. Do not look at what you gave up for a player. Don't look at what they got. But yeah, I just wonder what you think, Kev. Do you think the Cardinals re-signed Drake? Obviously, we know he's just on the transition tag at the minute, so he could move on at the end of this season. Or do you think they do move on? And if so, where do you think Drake could land, and what will his role be moving forward?
I mean, first of all, I'll show a bit of support with you on this one, Matt. I was pretty high on Kenyon Drake as well. So, after that finish into the 2019 season, it looked like he was going to be a 3-down back, but I think in that period as well, maybe Chase Edmonds was a little bit injured and a bit beat up. So it was hard to get a full picture, I guess. Personally, I think he'll be re-signed if the price is right, if he's not asking for too much money. I do think he's a capable running back. He scored 18 touchdowns over the last 2 seasons. And we already know that Chase Edmonds, he's not going to be a 3-down back, someone that can carry the workload. So I actually think them both together complement each other pretty well, which is not great for fantasy, but I think from real life, they are a nice complement to each other. I do think the Cardinals have got bigger priorities personally, like the O-line and also more weapons for Kyler Murray. Dan Arnold's not anything special, is he? So they can't really rely on Dan Arnold. I think if they can get a deal done, or if they can't get a deal done, that he'd be a nice fit in a couple of places with Kenyon Drake. He's proven that he can catch passes. He can be a touchdown scorer. So whichever role you put him in, he's versatile enough to stand out. The first guy I think of when I think of Kenyon Drake leaving is Bill Belichick. He's a known fan of his, and I'm sure with James White and Rex Burkhead off contract, he could find a role there. He also had a big game this season against the Patriots, which might not mean anything, but when Belichick was praising him previously, it's when he was on the Dolphins. So you never know. If I was to have a guess, which is probably completely wrong, but we'll have to see. Kenyon Drake, Patriots.
Yeah, I like that one. Yeah, I think that's a great point. Obviously, with, as you say, with James White leaving, there's a role there for him, and as you say, he's proven in the passing game. Could work alongside my good friend Sony Michel. I think that could be a great backfield. I didn't put him on my misses. I'm not having him as a miss. I just said he was a good piece to buy. I'm just going to put a disclaimer out. He was a cheap option at running back. I don't give no stick for that one.
We've also had another comment. Dan Arnold broke out. I mean, he didn't, but one thing Dan Arnold has got going for him is he looks a little bit like Matt. So at least he's not lacking it in the looks department. And then another fantastic message from Rich.
This is why we shouldn't have done a live stream. I
mean, you're a big Sony Michel fanatic, but actually digging in, he didn't do too bad, did he?
He didn't. Thank you. He was injured. He was injured for a lot of the season, and look what he did those last few games. League winner next year. I'm on him. I'm back on the train.
I mean, I'm not on league winner, but I think he's a little bit like Ronald Jones, where you know exactly what he is. He's a 2-down back. He's probably going to be going in the 30 to 40 range in Dynasty, maybe even lower with Damien Harris. Yeah. But it's one of them, isn't it? We'll just have to see how that backfield works out, because it's often a fluid backfield, and usually taking the cheapest option is the right option as well. Rightio. So we come on to my final miss, which I got wrong.
I can't believe you had two. I can't believe you had more than one miss, Kev, to be honest.
Well, to be honest, it did take a while. No, being true, I did have plenty of misses, but plenty of hits as well. I think it's like anything where nobody's going to be 100% right, are they? If they are, the liars. It's like when you see these people on Twitter posting they made the playoffs in 80% of the leagues. I mean, it's not true, is it? So quit that.
Well, I think 10% have made it in.
I know, it's wild. But one other thing I missed on was putting George Kittle over Travis Kelce in Dynasty. On this miss, I'd say it was more about me being high on Kittle than low on Kelce. I made the easy mistake of looking at fantasy points per game in 2019, seeing that Kelce had 15.9, Kittle had 15.8, and then using the 3-year age gap that they have between them, bumping up Kittle in the Dynasty rankings. Obviously, I was still really high on Travis Kelce. He's just come off the back of 4 tight end 1 seasons before this year, and then he's added a 5th one on top of that. But I did feel that that Kittle was going to grow, entering his age 27 season, become the top tight end in football. The part I overlooked was durability. Kittle's missed time in 2 of his 3 seasons. He's been banged up a ton due to his vicious nature. Whereas the flip side on Kelce is he's only missed 1 game in the previous 96. He's a model of consistency. He avoids big hits where possible, which is really helping his longevity at the position. So we all know how it panned out. Kittle was missing half a season. Kelce was a unicorn, wasn't he? Just absolutely owning it, 20 fantasy points a game. It'd have been the wide receiver 3 as a tight end, so it's absolutely crazy. Kittle's numbers actually were pretty in line with 2019 in the 8 games he played, but again, Kelce was on another planet. He's not showing any signs of slowing down. But even a guy like Darren Waller paced Kittle last season, so it'd be really interesting to see and get your thoughts on the tight end position in Dynasty. Do you think there's a big gap between Kelce and Kittle? Are they the same tier? Are they a different tier? And what sort of deal would you be willing to make to acquire, first of all, Kelce, and second of all, Kittle?
Yeah, so for me, Kelce, he's got to be on a tier on his own. I think, if anything, I'm going to put Kittle closer to the tight end 3, so that'd be Darren Waller for me. I think he's probably in a tier maybe with Darren Waller, and then just Kelce out on his own. I just can't understand any argument of why you take Kittle over Kelce. The only one that I hear is obviously the age difference. Travis Kelce's going to be 32 in the 2021 season. Kittle will be 28, so 4-year difference. I think the birthdays are like 2 days apart, so we're talking 4 years difference in age. But I mean, Kelce's showing no signs of slowing down at all. Who's to say that Kelce can't play for as long as what Kittle does? Because, as you say, there's injuries concerns with Kittle. And then Travis Kelce he hasn't missed a game through injury since 2013. So I'm not willing just to go on age alone for a reason why I'd take Kittle over Kelce. as you say, 5 seasons as the tight end, 1 is on a high-powered offense tied to probably the best quarterback in the league, in Patrick Mahomes. As I mentioned, he's not missed a game since 2013 through injury. Just he's showing no signs at all of slowing down. I mean, even showed it this weekend: 13 receptions, 118 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I mean, what what more do you want from your tight end? I mean,
Crazy.
it's unheard of, really. I've said it loads this year. You're just getting such an advantage having somebody like Travis Kelce on your roster that, yeah, if I can buy him, I'm buying into him definitely. As far as what I'd give in a 1 QB league, I think I'd pay up to the 104, 105. So right after those top running backs and maybe 1 or 2 of the top wide receivers. So then if you're talking Superflex, it'd probably be 107ish, 108. So just after the 1 or 2 of the quarterbacks. If you want to go on players wise, in my mind, I thought maybe someone like a mid wide receiver 1. You just mentioned he finished at the wide receiver 3, so why not give up a mid wide receiver 1? Someone, Stephon Diggs, I give up Stephon Diggs for him. I honestly would. Running backs maybe a low end RB1, so Austin Eckler, something like that. We know how volatile running backs can be. Travis Kelce is not volatile at all, is he? He just plays all year long and indestructible. Kittle, as I say, he's a little bit low for me. So 1 QB league, I've got 106, 107, so a couple of picks below, and same in Superflex, a couple of picks less than what I give for Kelce. Again, players wise, I'll probably go maybe a low wide receiver 1, somebody like Allen Robinson, Amari Cooper, maybe somebody like that. I think that'll be fine to do that. As I say, I get a lot of stick from it from like you and from Rich about being a tight end lover and I love the tight ends. But I think from what you're getting from those 2 guys, we've said that Kittle, he has his struggles with injuries and what have you, but you're just getting such an advantage over the rest of the position, players at the position, that I'm happy to give up a bit of value to get him.
Yeah, and I think if you look back at your leagues and you see who's got Travis Kelce on the roster, I'd say the majority of those teams will have been in the playoffs. I mean,
100%.
For any team that did have Travis Kelce and didn't make the playoffs, I think you've missed a trick there. You've had a really, really bad run of luck with injuries, I'd assume, with that. We've had a question come through from Rich, who's basically he's suggesting that Darren Waller is better than George Kittle. What's your thoughts on that?
As I said, I think if I'm ranking, I'm saying the gap between the Titan 1 and Titan 2 is bigger than Titan 2 to Titan 3. That's what I'm going to say. I've still got Kittle above Waller, but I mean, we're saying that we're going to take Kittle over Travis Kelce because of age, and then we're going to put Waller above Kittle, even though Waller's older. I mean, if we're going to have that argument, then I'm not putting Waller above Kittle, but it is closer. They're both in a tier together, I think.
Yeah, I agree that they're in the same tier. I think it is really close. I think Kittle gives you the upside because I still don't believe he's shown you his true ceiling. I think Waller probably has. I think Waller's a safer option. He's guaranteed. He's not really missed any time through injuries. I think a lot would depend on the makeup of your team in a startup as well. If you've got a pretty safe team and then you come to the pick, you probably go Kittle. If you've got a highly volatile start to your draft, you might want to go Waller and balance it out. So I think a lot of it's situational, but I guess in a vacuum, I'd probably still go Kittle just because playing for upside.
Yeah, I think in rankings I would as well, but then if you flip it and you say you're in a draft, how much later is Waller going to go than Kittle? I think Kittle's a sexy pick. Kittle's the one that everybody's going to reach for. He's going to be going not too far after Kelce, maybe even before him. There's people that are going to rank him above him. But then you're going to get Waller. How long after we're talking? 2 rounds, maybe. If you can get Waller 2 rounds later than Kittle, I'm taking Waller.
You're right. You could take Kittle and then do a trade after the draft, get a Waller plus for him. So make a great point there. Or you could even get to the Kittle pick and trade back to where you think Waller would go and again stay within that tier and get the value.
Sure.
So yeah, hits and misses. We've done it. That brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in.
Yeah,
Be sure to
good.
subscribe and follow us on Twitter at Fantasy Wildcard. It's been interesting today. Hope you've enjoyed it. We also have our Linktree site on our Twitter page where you can find all of our podcasts and our shows on YouTube. Please check it out. Please subscribe. Thank you very much. Hope you have a great rest of the evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Cheers.